Hi, folks. So, what was Bush v. Gore? What was Bush v. Gore? It was a presidential election in the year 2000, 20 years ago, where Vice President Al Gore was up against Texas Governor George W. Bush. It was a very, very, very close election, decided in the state of Florida. Now, what you have to understand is in the United States, we do not elect our presidents with just voting, or we do vote, but it's not the popular vote that wins. It is the vote of the Electoral College. Now, let me explain that to you real quick. The Electoral College is it's really not a college, but it's a bunch of people called electors. The Electoral College is a bunch of people called electors who are chosen per state to make a decision on who will be next president. Usually it is based on the vote of that state. Normally it is. If you live in Alabama and everybody votes for the Republican in Alabama, then the elector usually will pick the Republican. That's the way it usually works. In California, if the Democrat wins, then the Democrat gets the vote of California, gets the vote of the electorate. That's just how it works. But it was set up for a specific reason. Two reasons. One is that those days, back 200 more years ago when the Constitution was written, there were some issues between the North and South that were not exactly resolved. One of them, of course, was a slavery issue. But the other was the fact that there were states that were not the same size. And so the smaller states were afraid that the big states would dominate if it were just a direct vote. Of course, that's the fear today, too. Well, what they decided to do is, first of all, each state has two senators. Every state has the same number of senators, two per state. Well, then there's the representatives. That can vary from maybe 10 reps in one state, 20 here, 8 there, depending on the population. And so you add the number of senators with the number of representatives per state. Like if let's say Alabama has two senators, and let's say they have 8 representatives. Let's say that just for the sake of our thing. 2 plus 8 is 10. That means you get 2 senators and 8 representatives in one state. Therefore, you got 10 electoral votes. 2 senators, 8 representatives, 10 electoral votes. If I'm in a state that has, say, 20 representatives and 2 senators, then 20 plus 2 is 22 electoral votes. Again, it's all about keeping some balance so that one state doesn't just step all over another state. That's why they have it. The only problem with that is this. This is the glitch. The glitch is that in some states, depending on the population, you could have a huge difference between a winner and a loser, and it really wouldn't matter. You only get a certain number of electoral votes. Let's take, for example, California. They have close to 40 million people. They have 2 senators and maybe 35 representatives or 36 or whatever. So they would have approximately 35 or 38, 2 plus 8. Let's say it's 2 senators and let's say 35 representatives. They therefore have 37 electoral votes. I repeat, 2 senators, 35 representatives, 35 plus 2 is 37 electoral votes. Well, if you have Texas with 20 million people, they might have 20 electors or 20 representatives, and 2 senators. 20 and 2 makes 22 electors, right? Every state has that total number of electors, but the fact is that each state gets at least some representation in the Electoral College. So that way they're not completely left out. And that's the whole idea behind the Electoral College. If one state that's a big state and the guy wins in that state by huge margins, it's not going to stomp out the votes of the people in the smaller states. It's only accounted as that one number, a total of senators and representatives. For example, in the last election, probably 2 million or more plurality for Hillary Clinton. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton beat President Trump by at least 2 million votes. But because it's just one state, the total number of electors was all she got. She didn't get the 2 million, votes, she got the number of electors. If she had 500,000 votes, she would have got the same number of electors. If she'd won by 10 million votes, she would have had the same number of electors. And the same thing with a small state. If you have 1,000 to nothing for one candidate, they still get the same number of representatives. The winner does. So, and some states are proportional. Like if you get a third of the vote, you get a third of the electors. Or if you get half the vote, you get half the electors. Some states are that way, but the vast majority is winner take all. But the idea is the electoral college is used. It is the way the presidents get elected, and normally it reflects the vote in that state. Normally it does. So, in the case of Bush v. Gore, it was basically a dead heat until Florida. And then the vote count was 1,000 votes victory for George W. Bush. The only problem with the 1,000 vote victory was it was below the percentage that you had to have to avoid a recount. And so it was below the percentage, and therefore an automatic recount took place, which reduced the numbers down even more. And then it was noticed that some of the ballots, when they cast them, they were called hanging chads. Was that a vote or not? So you literally had people doing a recount and they've got their eyes spyglasses. They're looking at that card to make sure it's a vote. And there were so many people doing that the joke was he won by a hanging chad, right? Well, it turned out that Mr. Gore wanted several counties recounted. And the argument of the Bush camp was, hey, why not the whole state do a recount? Well, there was no need, they said. There was only these 4 states that needed to be recounted. 4 counties needed to be recounted. So both sides distrusted each other, thinking they were trying to get the advantage of the other. So it went to court. First, the Florida court agreed with the Gore decision to keep counting. And then it went to the U.S. Supreme Court, where 5-4, they voted to stop the counting. And as a result, by a little over 400 votes, President Bush, George W. Bush, won the state of Florida and then became president of the United States by an electoral vote of 271 to 266. You need 270 to win. So 271 to 266. He won the Electoral College by the 1 vote margin. Electoral College is something that is believed to keep at least some sense of balance in the election system. There's been a lot of people calling for a change in that, to go to the popular vote. The only problem is that if most of the people in the cities are in areas that are controlled by Democrats, or either party, Republican or Democrat, one party, then you're going to see people campaigning in that area only. And guess what? The rest of the country gets left out. And that's been the biggest bugaboo for most people who are against the popular vote, because the popular vote will come from the people in the cities. What about the rest of the country? So far, we haven't seen a change. There have been adjustments and tweaks per state, but not nationally. So the Electoral College is what was the difference. It made a difference in that election. And if you go all the way back to 1876, it made a difference then. Rutherford B. Hayes was elected because a group of Southern congressmen agreed that he had just enough votes to be president. But the only way they would agree to that was if he agreed to the 1877 Compromise, which meant that Reconstruction was to end in the South. 1877, yeah. 10 years after the Civil War. Pull the military out and we'll have you president of the United States. He did, they did. So these kind of political back and forths have happened before, but it's been quite a long time since we had a Bush versus Gore. And yes, even though the last election in 2020, there was a 2 million margin vote for Hillary Clinton, the Electoral College was very clear. It was a vote and a victory for President Trump. So the controversy of B.B. Gore will probably go down for a very, very long time. Thanks for watching.